We know East Carolina loves these Power 5 matchups. They've knocked out Virginia Tech and North Carolina in recent years. On Saturday, they take aim at South Carolina of the SEC. We bring in Will Gunter from 107.5's The All-New Early Game to help us break down the Gamecocks taking on the Pirates. Will, how's it going, man?
Well, it's not as good as it was the first week. South Carolina beats Vanderbilt. People were very happy, very excited. We're maybe a little bit too excited. And then obviously the way the first half played out last week, and maybe people a little bit more back to reality now after what we saw in Starkville.
Yeah, bad first half against Vandy, a 10-0, but against that offense, you were able to recover, win on the road, 24-0 down at halftime against Mississippi State. Not so much. A little bit too big of a mountain to climb in that one. So your thoughts about the quarterback situation? Perry Orth looked like the better man to me against Vandy, but couldn't get the job done in the first half against Mississippi State. Brandon McElwain made some plays.
Well, it really doesn't matter who plays quarterback right now if the offensive line is going to play the way they did. Will Muschamp was adamant about that in his Tuesday press conference, 3 times being very defiant or very definitive in using the word whipped when describing his offensive line. So you or I, Mark, could go play quarterback right now, and it really wouldn't matter. But with that being said, it's an interesting week. I don't know if Brandon McElwain is the best quarterback at this moment, but this is the best week to throw him out there and let him get a start. You go on the road next week to Kentucky, and I know Lexington is not a house of horrors and is not going to be this intense atmosphere, but you got on the road next week, and then you come home with Georgia and Texas A&M, or Texas A&M and Georgia in back-to-back weeks. And so that's not really a time to put a true freshman out there and let him start a game. This is it. This is the best time really for the next 6 weeks, next 5 weeks, to put him out there and let him go. And South Carolina needs Brandon McElwain. He showed some glimpses. He was 11 of 22. He showed some glimpses of what he could do on Saturday in the second half against Mississippi State. He led them to 2 scores. Against Vanderbilt, they did drive the football. He fumbled down in the red zone. So this, to me, even though Will Muschamp is not named a starting quarterback, there's not a better week you can pick right now to go with Brandon McElwain as your starter. You'll have the home crowd. You'll have the environment. This will be maybe the easiest defense for the offense to move the ball against over the next few weeks. So great opportunity. No starter's been named yet, but that's who I'm expecting will trot out there for the first snap on Saturday afternoon.
I know they're not brutal environments, but I don't know who doesn't like South Carolina in the league office, giving you guys with a first-year head coach 3 consecutive road games to start conference play. But that's the way it shapes out. You talk about the offensive line and the quarterback situation. I noticed that David Williams, no carries on the day against Mississippi State. He was vying for the starting job. Of course, the running back situation continues to be an issue.
No carries, but no snaps. Didn't even get on the field to throw a block, let alone actually get the ball handed to him. Rod Talley, a walk-on running back, was the second running back and got a few snaps and a few carries in the ball game for the Gamecocks when they wanted to spell A.J. Turner. This is an ongoing storyline with David Williams. He was challenged by Will Muschamp in the third practice of the third fall camp practice, and Saturday didn't see any snaps. He traveled with the team, so it's something that's worth keeping an eye on. There's a freshman, Rico Dowdle, who was highly thought of coming out of the Asheville area that they were hoping they were going to count on this year. He's had a injury, a hamstring, a growing injury early on, and has not been able to play. They're hoping maybe he'll be back for the Kentucky game. But right now, South Carolina, ultra thin at the running back position. But again, it comes back to the offensive line. It doesn't matter if you had Marcus Lattimore back there. If you can't open holes, if you can't keep somebody in front of you, nobody's going to look very good running the football.
34 yards rushing. That includes sack yardage, so not a fair total. But when your lead back goes 16 for 32 at 2 yards a pop, that's not going to get the job done. Hayden Hurst is a guy that you filled me in on prior to the start of the season. He was prominent in the passing game with 8 receptions, and I like Brian Edwards and what he did against Vandy, and just not necessarily just the numbers with over 100 yards, but I think he needs to get the football as well.
Well, the passing game, Deebo Samuel on the opening play of the game had a touchdown. They dialed up a long pass, and Samuel had a touchdown and came up limp with a hamstring injury and was never 100% the remainder of the game. South Carolina's trying to find guys to step up, and what Mississippi State did was very smart. They put a safety over top of Brian Edwards and essentially double covered him for the remainder of the game and said, you know what, beat us. Hayden Hurst was the beneficiary of that double coverage and caught 8 passes. But again, they weren't really down the field. I mean, you look at the stats, it wasn't like he was catching passes 15, 20 yards down the field and making plays deep into the secondary. They were quick passes, screen passes to him. South Carolina's got to have somebody else step up at wide receiver to help to take some pressure off of Brian Edwards. Debo Samuel's got to be healthy. Hayden Hurst has got to catch some passes down the field, but he was the beneficiary on Saturday night of double coverage on Brian Edwards. They just have to go down the field more and make more of what Will Muschamp calls explosive plays.
We didn't know a whole lot about the defense after week 1. Obviously, Vandy is hamstrung in the passing game. They really beat you up in the first half on the run, but South Carolina really stepped up in the second half to stop most of the bruising plays between the tackles with Blasingame and Webb. Your thoughts about the defensive performance here? Of course, a lot of points given up in the first half, but they have to deal with an offense that is not giving them field position.
Well, number one, Nick Fitzgerald ran for 195 yards. That's the quarterback from Mississippi State. Nick Fitzgerald, I would be willing to place good money or a soda on the fact that Nick Fitzgerald will not run for 195 yards in the remaining 10 games. That was a shocker of a statistic on Saturday night. What was surprising, I thought, Mark, was that South Carolina didn't look ready to play. They missed tackles. Will Muschamp addressed that Tuesday in his press conference. He said, listen, we missed the same amount of tackles against Mississippi State that we did against Vanderbilt. The difference was Vanderbilt played what he called close contact football. 2 running backs right there in the backfield. They would run between the tackles. If you missed a guy, you'd have 3 or 4 other guys there to clean up the play. Against Mississippi State, it was a spread option offense. Nick Fitzgerald running the spread keeper and getting to the corner. If you miss a tackle, you're in space. There's nobody there to help clean up the play. So as he pointed out, against Vanderbilt, a missed tackle cost you 3 or 4 yards. Against Mississippi State, it cost you 13, 14, 20 yards. Or in one case, Nick Fitzgerald had a 74-yard run. And again, we're talking about a 6'5", 250-pound quarterback that is not Cam Newton. So I was surprised, though, by just what appeared to be a step backwards in the level of physical football they played. They didn't look ready. They didn't look prepared. We'll see if that changes with their first home game on Saturday.
Yeah, it's doubly concerning because Mississippi State last year had issues running the ball. It appeared it was going to be the same because they didn't run much against South Alabama, don't really have a traditional running game. They had to get it out of the quarterback, and that they did in spades, 195, as you mentioned, on just 17 carries for Fitzgerald. I mentioned off the top this East Carolina football team has slayed a lot of ACC teams in recent years, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. They do it again last week against NC State, 33-30. Mid-level ACC teams, decent programs, not the cream of the crop, but I'm familiar with this Philip Nelson, who transferred from Minnesota. Got to see him play quite a bit. Hit up North Carolina State for 300 yards in the passing game. So this will not be an easy task.
It'll be an interesting task. We had Stephen Igo on from Hoist the Colors, which is a East Carolina website, and he said if South Carolina, what would scare East Carolina fans the most, what South Carolina needs to take advantage of is passing the football, which right now they're struggling doing. Brandon McElwain, not great in the passing game. And number 2, getting to the quarterback, which leads to your point, Philip Nelson. As he pointed out, Philip Nelson in the second half this year, in the second half of ball games against Western Carolina and North Carolina State, has won in 2 games in completion. He has been very good in the second half. I believe he's completing around 78, 80% of his passes regardless. I believe he's somewhere around 61 to 75 in his first 2 games. So he's completing passes to begin with, and he really gets hot in the second half. They're going to, again, put South Carolina in 1-on-1 situations, which is not a positive for a secondary that lost a key player last week in Chaz Elder, lost him early in the game. He's out for a couple weeks. Chris Lamons, Jamarcus King, Rashad Fenton, and DJ Smith will have to step up, and then they'll have to find a 5th guy to step in and replace them, and they will have to tackle in space Zay Brown, I believe, is the wide receiver. Zay Jones, I believe, is the wide receiver. Zay Jones. Not Zay Brown is a South Carolina commitment. Zay Jones is the wide receiver that South Carolina will have to focus on Saturday afternoon. And again, when the tackle is there to be made in a one-on-one situation, they will have to do it to run the risk of East Carolina either gaining extra yards or busting the big play and it resulting in 6 points.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to Zay Jones at Media Day. He's writing his name in the East Carolina record books. 98 receptions, 1,100 yards last year, 81 catches the previous season, and hit up North Carolina State for 7 catches as well. So they will throw it around a lot, but they obviously are showing some leaks on defense as well, giving up some yardage and some points. So hopefully an opportunity for the Gamecocks to get healthy on that side of the ball.
Well, again, South Carolina is going to have to play better. I mean, look, they have to play better all the way around. We talked about the offensive line being whipped last week. They have to play better. The defense has to play more physical. Will Muschamp, and he was adamant. It was a great line at halftime. The South Carolina sideline reporter is interviewing Will Muschamp, and he says something to the effect of, "Coach, having trouble tackling. What are you going to do?" Muschamp says, "Well, we don't have anybody else. We're lacking." He was saying it with much more fire and passion and intensity than I'm saying it with. But he basically said, these guys have got to learn to tackle or else, and we're going to teach them to do that. And he finished it with kind of one of those, how do you like that answer? And we all kind of went, well, okay, that's your job. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. But he was fired up. He was intense. It's interesting to see how both sides of the ball, but the defense, because it's a Will Muschamp, Travaris Robinson defense, how they respond in terms of playing physical, something I thought they did against Vanderbilt, how they respond on Saturday.
Yeah, the strategy's fascinating. We love football and talking about the X's and O's, but if you don't put a hat on somebody on offense to clear them out of the way for the running backs and for the quarterbacks to have time to throw it downfield, if you don't tackle on defense, blocking and tackling, that's what it's all about. You got to start there. That's what all the good teams do.
It'll be important. Again, to me, this game comes down, and an interesting story within the game, East Carolina's defensive line coach, Deke Adams, just coming off a 3-year tenure under Steve Spurrier at South Carolina. He'll go against offensive line coach Sean Elliott. Both of them have been on the staff for the last 3 years. So both should know the tendencies of one another. Sean Elliott should have an idea of what Deke Adams is going to try and do in terms of technique and getting to the quarterback defensively. Deke Adams has a great idea of the personnel that Sean Elliott will be working with this week. That, to me, will define this game. South Carolina has some playmakers. They're not great playmakers, but they're young. Brandon McElwain, I think, is going to get his opportunity Saturday afternoon. If that offensive line plays, is as porous as they were against Mississippi State, it doesn't matter, again, what happens. East Carolina will come in and pick up another victory against South Carolina. So they hadn't done in a while, but they could easily do if that offensive line doesn't step up.
Okay, the Gamecocks are about a field goal favorite at home, so it's basically a pick'em game according to Vegas at a neutral site. South Carolina, East Carolina, 4 p.m. Eastern time. That game on the SEC Network. Will Gunter helping us out on breaking down the Pirates and the Gamecocks from 107.5, the all-new game. Will, it's always a pleasure, man.
Always appreciate it. Glad we could do it. Look forward to a great weekend of football, and y'all take care.